funds, which we anticipate getting some of in this fiscal year. So it will be amended again in June, and some will probably come next year for the 57% of the ESSER 2 that has not been appropriated yet. All told, that's going to be about $1.3 to $1.4 million. And then that doesn't count the funds that Mr. Saunders was talking about for the summer school, $550 per pupil, and then the new ESSER 3 money, which is in the new stimulus package, which we are not aware of that dollar amount allocation yet. So
can you explain what the ESSER monies are?
The ESSER money is federal money that is going to flow through the state. We received our first ESSER money back in 2019-20 fiscal year. And that we wound up being able to utilize to supplant some of our regular expenses. It's pretty flexible with what they allow. New federal packages have come through the state, and the state governor has appropriated 43% of the ESSER 2, so the second round of this elementary and secondary school economic recovery package for school districts. And then she also authorized equalization funding for those districts that had not met $450 per pupil of the federal ESSER money that she pulled from the stabilization of the equity, and then part of the governor's grant, the 10% that ESSER provided to the governors in the states. So that's money we anticipate getting this fiscal year as well. We would hopefully be awarded about $345,000 for the equalization. We're getting about $340,000 in the ESSER money, but only 43% of that, or roughly $474,000, will be appropriated in this year. It looks like the 57%, or another $628,000, may go as long as January of 2022 before it's appropriated at the state level.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next page will get into a little bit of detail on the local revenue side. With the local revenues, this is the biggest drop, and a lot of this has to do with the fact of we don't have events going on, we're not renting space, and we don't have those student fundraiser activities going on that are part of our general fund now because of GASB 84. Some of this may switch around as we see different things occurring, but it's not going to be anywhere near what we normally draw for a full fiscal year. We've pretty much cleaned it out. I talked to the directors of these activities, and they said, let's just go with the conservative. So we've dropped all revenues from those sources, which does affect us to the tune of a $220,000 loss. The next page shows the state aid, which is actually an increase of $127,000. There are some offsets between the adjustment between foundation and special ed, which again will be corrected. I think the state had a formula error that they mentioned, but this is where it stands right now. It will be amended again. The biggest increase here is that retirement dollars did come to us at a higher rate. This is that normalization of the retirement costs. And so we do have an additional shy of $120,000 coming. We are planning to defer some at-risk funding for summer school and additional support with the other money that we have available to us. And then the next page shows a small increase with our federal revenue. We have a small amount for the title grant adjustment and a little bit for the COVID grant increase that flowed through MRISA. So just over $3,000 in the federal grant. This is the area that come June, we will be amending with the ESSER money because that is federal dollars. So the next page gets into the expenditures. And most of what you see here, we're actually increasing about $518,000. And most of that is because of the hazard and merit and off-schedule payments. And then a lot of supports that we put in place with long-term subs and the office and health aides through this COVID time. That's reflected in the salaries and benefits. And that's most of what we see this amendment. In the purchase services, we have increases in some of our purchase service, the PCMI subs, contracted service subs, And then we also bought software licenses for more of the online curriculum. The supplies are shifting downward because of some grant funding that we've changed to other areas of the grants. And then capital outlay has a large increase due to the one-to-one initiative and 2 buses coming on. We have a lift bus and we have a regular bus in that budget. The other expenditures is the offsetting side of the student activity funds and a lot of the travel and different things that we are not going to be performing. So much of that has been offset with the revenues. Both sides are coming down at the same time. The next page just lists all those things that I just said, and I figured it's easier to hear instead of read some of this because I know it gets pretty small. But those are the big ticket items in this expenditure budget amendment. And then the next page takes all of the information from the revenue and the expenditures to apply it to where we will wind up with this proposed budget at June 30 if we were to spend and receive every item that we have budgeted. At this point, the fund equity from last year is the audited fund equity for the general fund. This budget's proposed revenues of 36.4 million and the proposed expenditures of 37.2 would bring us to a fund equity at June 30 of 8.2. That's about 22.16%. And again, we still have some unknowns out there with the ESSER 2 and some of the COVID grant money and the equalization and potentially ESSER 3 now coming into play. We'll see where that all winds up and have a better number for you with a June amendment. But as of right now, this March amendment, this takes as much as we know into consideration. After the general fund, we'll look at the food service fund. So this concludes the general fund. Maybe I should stop and ask, are there any questions on the general fund at this point? In hearing none, we'll move to the food service fund.
I mean, hold on, we're down about $700,000, it looks like.
Yep.
Where can you give me just a quick overview of where we're down? I mean, just where is it 700,000? Because everything else looked pretty close.
Well, the expenditures decreased by about 500,000, and the bulk of that was the hazard pay, the merit pay, the extra incentives, and a lot of the long-term sub. It's mostly in salaries, benefits.
Okay.
The revenues went down around 100,000. So those were the big ticket items. And then we did increase expenditures in that capital outlay for the buses. We have some of the software licensing. So those were increases of our expenditure budget as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Brian, if I can just add, we didn't, with the cliff that was projected last summer, we stripped out the buses and that one-to-one initiative last summer, fearing that for the worst. So those are things that we did put back into the budget.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the way everything was going up to that point, we were good. And all of a sudden, look, well, we're down 700,000.
Yeah.
I was just wanting to see where that clarification was.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, let's take a look at the food service revenues. And one of the good things for the food service is that the federal government has extended this free program. So what you see here is we are down in the local revenues about 402,000, but you can see the federal revenues make that up. So the federal subsidies that we have coming to us, which also include our commodities, are offsetting those local costs of families paying for their meals. So thankfully, the food service is still moving forward and still hanging on, doing well with what it's doing and providing many meals, both on site and off site when we have closures, or this summer, the plan is also to provide meal services to other areas outside of just our summer school. So our meals through the federal government should increase our total revenue for food service by about $114,000 with this amendment. And then the next slide will show the expenditures, which are also going up just a little bit, about $60,000. largely in the area of, again, the salaries and benefits with additional subs, additional hazard pay that went out for our staff, and then some of the supplies, which are our breakfast foods, because one of the things that Chris has been doing has been supplementing with more easy to use breakfast packages that are quick and a little more costly, but helpful in the schools. So the next slide will show what that looks like when we apply that to our equity. Again, starting with our audited equity of about 280,000, this March amendment revenue and March expenditures, we draw about $40,000 off of the equity. However, this does not have the full projections of what that federal subsidy will look like for the remaining months of this fiscal year. And Chris's anticipation is that it's going to come in higher than that. So if we wind up in a positive balance, he has plans to try to purchase another lift gate truck. The last one that we purchased was in 2010, and possibly take a look at some cafeteria tables, which have been a long time before we've had any replacements or upgrades to those. More to come on the June amendment for that, hopefully. The next slide is showing that capital projects fund. This is the unrestricted capital projects fund that partners with the general fund if we need something. We haven't been tapping into this, but this shows that the amendment for this time is increasing from the 100, normally the 150,000, we had taken that 100,000 away and we're putting it back in at this point. The next page shows what that looks like to the equity. Again, just building up the equity to a little under $1 million. The Board of Ed does have a commitment of 500,000 for this fund. And then 350,000 of that 996 is set aside for one-to-one transfer. And that leaves about 146,000 still available for capital outlay if we need to tap into this with things that may not be eligible for the sinking fund. The next slide shows the sinking fund revenues and expenditure changes. These are pretty simplistic, but we did have some property taxes. The city of Marquette lost some properties to Brownfield, so we lost some sinking fund revenue there. And the sinking fund also had a Headley reduction fraction applied, which is a permanent reduction. This is not made whole like our general fund, and we can't increase the millage. Once it's reduced through the Headley reduction, it's permanently reduced until we go for another election.
Deb, would you explain? I don't know if the new folks understand what Headley is or not.
Yes, with the Headley reduction, what happens, I think it was back in 1994 when this went into place, as properties increase in value over time, if they ever exceed the value of a regular cost of living adjustment or inflation, there's a reduction fraction that gets put on that so that it can't escalate too high. And then that will in turn decrease the amount of revenue that we can collect from a sinking fund, because that millage rate gets reduced down because valuations have exceeded the rate of inflation. That happens in areas of general fund and sinking fund, but with the general fund, because of the offset of how the state aid foundation works, we receive that money back from the state. With a sinking fund, we had a 0.95 millage that was passed by the voters, and it's now down to a 0.94 something permanently. And every year, if the rate of property values exceeds the rate of inflation, that reduction fraction will kick in and continue to decrease the amount of millage we can collect for the sinking fund purposes.
And how many years has it been that property values outpaced inflation?
This is the first reduction fraction we've had, and we passed the sinking fund in 2014.
Right.
So not too bad, considering our property values have been very stable in Marquette.
So is that the reduction for the year 2019 or 2020?
It was the 2020 tax year.
So what is it down to? Is that the one that's affected by 18 mils?
We have not affected the 18 mills because when we had that voted in, we actually increased over the 18 mills, knowing that we can only collect the 18 mills, but we have approved greater amount than that so that we don't have to worry about that reduction fraction kicking in.
Okay, right. We approved the next 0.5 or something.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Jamie. It was a little muffled.
I'm sorry, I think we approved like an extra 0.5 or something, didn't we?
I don't remember what it was over the 18 mills.
Oh, yeah.
I'd have to look back and see on our L20 4029, but I can get that out and
No
send
problem.
it to Linda so that we know how far ahead we are. The other part of the sinking fund budget is a few increases in the construction piece. There will be more coming. I think we've had some additional change orders that'll be taken care of in the June amendment as well. But the next slide will show what this looks like. And this is important based on our parking lot project. The audited fund equity with this budget's proposed revenues and proposed expenditures leaves us about 1.6. And then we typically, because we have a summer tax collection for the city of Marquette, anticipate roughly 500,000 that will come in July and August for those summer collections that will help boost this to the point where we feel comfortable that we can fund that parking lot project. Any questions on the other funds? If not, then if Ellie can put up the adoption format spreadsheet just to have that in the correct format that the board needs to approve. And it's a spreadsheet that's color coded by years.
So,
It should be in that same folder, I'm thinking. There we go. That's it. Thanks, Ellie. And I don't know if we can get that a little bigger. It's really tiny. I don't know if it's helpful or not, but this is, at least we need to show you the previous 2 audited years, the adopted, the prior amended, and then this proposed budget together. We're looking at the final column and shows the general fund down. We've looked at the revenues and the expenditures and should wind up. Should wind up with the same equity on the PowerPoint, but in the adoption format. Let's see here. The bottom line should show about 8.2 million. If we can scroll down, little too far, just the general fund, the first page on the bottom totals of the first page. The previous equity was the 8.9, 3.7 8.21 is the 10% commitment that we have, and that plus the 4.5 unassigned is the 8.2 million, the 22% fund equity that we're looking at. If we continue to scroll down now to the different funds, the next one is the food service fund. Again, showing the revenues in detail, the expenditures, and then winding up with about 240,000 of equity there. And then after that is the capital projects fund, which will be amended to show that 100,000 increase and winding up just shy of $1 million. And then the sinking fund, which has our revenues increasing or decreasing, our expenditures increasing, and then winding up with the 1.6 and anticipating the summer collections. So this is the adoption format with the previous budgets and audited figures on there. This does get posted on our website. If anybody wants to get copies of that or look at that after it's approved this evening. Any questions for me? Okay. Thanks, Ellie. I appreciate the the assistance on this. I know I had a terrible time with appropriations because I just wasn't able to share my screen very well and still be able to speak.
Thanks, Deb.
Alrighty, I'll see if I can share a document real quick here with you. Ellie, you got it open for me to share? I changed computers today so I could. It's not letting me for some reason. Well, I got my other computer hooked up. So I'll go through some of the COVID data for you guys again. I don't know why it wasn't letting me. I switched to my Chromebook to get the picture fixed. Let me share. A couple things. I hadn't been sharing the district COVID tracking page that we typically use. We actually, knock on wood, had a few meetings in a row there where we didn't really have any COVID cases to report. That changed dramatically last week. We started to see an uptick in COVID cases. Thankfully, we haven't had any new cases for staff, but we are up to 9 confirmed student COVID cases and 1 probable. The breakdown of that is 1 confirmed COVID case at Graverette, 2 confirmed COVID cases at Marquette Alternative High School, 6 confirmed COVID cases Marquette Senior High School, and 1 probable at Marquette Alternative High School. So as a result of that, I don't know the exact number, but we've certainly had many students quarantined as a result. One of the questions I think for the public that has come up with what was just released as new CDC guidelines that schools can begin to seat students 3 feet instead of 6 feet. The guidelines for quarantining is still 6 feet. So just because you can place desks 3 feet apart does not change the quarantining guidelines that we get from the health department, that you still have to quarantine anybody within 6 feet that's had contact, masked or unmasked, for 15 minutes. So we did get a number of parents curious as to what that was. We certainly reached out to the health department, and they're still following the 6-foot guidelines as far as quarantining goes. So that's what the current COVID cases look like. As a result, as we try to get through the rest of this sports season, we have hockey playoffs and boys and girls basketball still active. We have postponed the start of spring practices. Those were supposed to start this week and carry through spring break. And Alex has postponed the start of spring practices. So hopefully as we hit spring break and people begin to distance a little bit again, that we have a little bit of reprieve and we'll be able to get those seasons off to a fresh, healthy start moving forward. So that's what the COVID outlook looks like at this point in time. Then I also share with you the two-way interaction rates. That's what I tried to share as far as the screen share goes. Marquette Senior High School up through March 15th. Total number of face-to-face students, 605. Total number of online students, 154. Total number of hybrid students, 144. The two-way interaction rates, 97% for our face-to-face students, 100% for our online students, and 100% for our hybrid students. Just so you know, is going back where we began tracking these back in October, November. The high school had 577 face-to-face students, so they're up to 605 now. They started with 191 online students. They're down to 154 online students. They started with 167 hybrid students. They're down to 144 hybrid students. Moving over to Marquette Alternative High School. Total number face-to-face is 118. Total number online, 98 or 38, I'm sorry. 118 face-to-face, 38 online, and no hybrid students. 95.76% for the two-way interaction rates for his face-to-face students, 100% for his online students. His numbers have changed back from November when we started to track this. He had 93 face-to-face students at that point in time, and now he's at 118. His online students were 40. They're at 38 now. He's seen a pretty nice uptick in enrollment, so that's why the numbers may not seem to really add up, because we've added a number of students to his program since November. Bothell Middle School. Going back to November, 502 face-to-face. Currently, as of March 15th, 593 students. So he's up 91 students face-to-face. That two-way interaction rate for those face-to-face students is 98.65%. Total number of online students as of March 15th, 81. And that's a decline of 168 to where he was last fall. And that two-way interaction rate is 96.3%. And the total number of hybrid students is currently at 34. That's down from 46 from last fall. Cherry Creek, currently at 333 face-to-face. Two-way interaction rate is 90.39%. Number of online students, 38. And number of hybrid students, 16. His two-way interaction rate for the online and hybrid students is at 100%. Just a comparable, last fall, 290 face-to-face. He's up to 333. And so he's added about 43 total number of online. He was at 79 in the fall. He's down to 38. So those numbers are you can see most of those 43 students that started out online have probably now come back to face-to-face. So that's where those numbers at. His hybrid students have remained steady throughout the year. He started with 18, he's at 16 right now. Graverette, currently at 250 face-to-face students. Started the year with 236. Their 2A interaction rate is 99.6%. Number of online students is at 26. They started with 43. That 2A interaction rate is 96.15%. And total number of hybrid students is 11. That's 100%. And they started the year with 11 hybrid students. Sandy Knoll, 311 face-to-face students. Started the year with 272. The 2A interaction rate is 98.71%. Number of online students is 50 right now. He started the year, Kevin Hooper, Sandy Knoll, started the year with 91, so they're down to 50. That interaction rate is 100%. And hybrid students, they have 8. They started the year with 13. That 2A interaction rate is 100%. In the last building, Superior Hills, currently 313 students face-to-face. They started the year with 272. The 2A interaction rate for those face-to-face students is 98.4%. Total number of online students, 28. They started the year with 63. So that number's come down quite a bit as the number of face-to-face went up. The 2A interaction rate for those online students is 100%. And the number of hybrid students in that building is 4. They started the year with 12. 2A interaction rate is 100%. A little change a little later in the agenda. I'm going to ask the board to actually formally take a vote. We've been, I think it's without necessarily voting, been said that we continue with a face-to-face format. But for some of those funding mechanisms that Deb Berry explained in the budget amendment, feel it's probably a little safer that we actually vote on this moving forward to make sure that we're able to tap into some of that funding. A lot of the state funding moving forward is tied to districts offering face-to-face instruction or making it accessible for all students. So
That's coming up on the agenda.
that's all I have.
Okay.
Do you have a question, Mr. Randall? I'm sorry.
No, that's coming up on the agenda. Item
Yep.
Brought that vote.
Yes.
Okay, item number 6, comments from the public. Ellie, do we have any in the queue? Okay. The agenda item only, there you go. But it's okay, I guess. I don't know. Not having. Okay.
You want me to run the 5-minute clock, Mr. Randall? Or Deb, I don't know if she's able to do it where she's at. I can do it certainly. I'll put it on my phone. Sir.
I've got it as well, but
Oh,
I'll wait
okay.
until they introduce themselves. I normally wait until they start speaking.
You're the master of the time, so I'll let you continue with that. You're extremely
right.
good at that. Wasn't sure if the clocks work the same down there in Florida, so.
Okay.
Any luck, Ellie? You said there was 2 people in a hopper waiting to get in? No pun intended, Linda.
Okay, we also have another slot at the end of the agenda if they want to come back. So, moving on to item number 7, approve the consent agenda. Minutes of the regular board meeting of February 22nd. The personnel report dated March 2021. Financial reports of February 21, 2021. Receipts and disbursements and financial report. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
Okay, a motion and support. Any discussion? Hearing none, Linda, we have a roll call vote.
James Randall,
Yes.
Dr. Brian Cherry,
Yes.
Kristen Kembenzi,
Yes.
James Hewitt,
Yes.
Glenn Sarka,
Yes.
Jennifer Clip,
Yes.
Jennifer Ray.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, item number 8, board committee reports, appropriations.
Yeah, it's a pretty quick one. Last week, we met leading up to an advance of this regular meeting, and we discussed the budget amendment as already gone over by Ms. Berry. And the other 2 items that were discussed were a couple of budget items that were affecting just some unforeseen costs that came up. One was with some A&E fees that our current architectural firm had discovered when they were putting together the new redesign plans for the MSHS parking lot. And then there's some also recommendation, and I think we're moving forward with it already, to retube one of the boilers at the high school as well. So both of those items were thrown into the mix, but that was about it.
Jim, on the additional A&E fees, that was also offset by a certain amount of savings too, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, new business. Consider amendment to the 2021 budget. We have a motion to consider the amendment.
I'll make a motion that we approve the budget amendment.
Support.
Any motion support, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move in, roll call vote.
James Randall,
Yes.
Dr. Brian Cherry,
Yes.
Kristen Kembenzi,
Yes.
James Hewitt,
Yes.
Glenn Sarka,
Yes.
Jennifer Clip,
Yes.
Jennifer Ray.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, item B, the reconfirmation of instructional delivery methods for the COVID. Course, the motion to take care of that.
Can't hear. It's hard, I couldn't hear that. Sorry.
That's all right, we are considering reconfirmation of instructional delivery methods. The Bill's COVID report. We need a motion to do that.
Make the motion that we continue offering the current form of instruction as we've been doing. As recommended.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Linda?
James Randall,
Yes.
Dr. Brian Cherry,
Yes.
Kristen Cambenzi,
Yes.
James Hewitt,
Yes.
Glenn Sarka,
Yes.
Jennifer Clip,
yes,
Jennifer Ray.
yes,
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, item number C, consider awarding 2021 MAPS High School Improvement Project to Smith Construction Incorporated. Very good.
So those bids were shared with the board. You saw 3 different bids that came in. Smith Construction was the low bid. I think followed by Oberstar and I don't have the sheet in front of me, but the third bid was company out on 480 there.
Smith.
Third
wow.
company was A. Lindbergh and Sons, Inc.
Lindbergh and Sons. Thank you. Wow.
I don't remember.
So we had the 3 bids, Smith, Oberstar, A. Lindbergh and Sons. Thank you, Linda. And Smith came in as the low bid. One of the things is we pay A&E fees to GEI is they sit down with the low bidder, make sure that those costs that are included are accurate. So hopefully we don't have a lot of change orders or things like that after the fact, that those were accurate. So GE came back in their recommendation for the board was to award this parking lot project to the low bidder, which is construction, to the tune of, I think it was 1.583 million. And just put it out there, this was strictly for the construction, the pavement, stormwater, that aspect. There will be a secondary bid that goes out for the electrical portion of the project. So this is for the construction portion of the project.
Do we have any idea what the estimate is on the electrical?
It includes the auxiliary services building. We don't have that yet, no. This includes repaving and redoing the auxiliary services building, taking down the bus pen, moving the charging stations, increasing the size of the parking lot up by auxiliary to have the buses, we would no longer be storing buses in the bus pen. Adding a front semi loop for the access to actually the front of the building, a bus loop in the front, eliminating one of the parking lots off Fair Avenue to make that a little safer, and also aligning the openings on Fair Avenue with the cross streets, so it's a little easier for safety for kids to travel back and forth. Redoing all the stormwater, redoing a good portion of the sewer, and again repaving the entire parking lot, both the east and the west side of Marquette Senior High School. It includes a lot of curbing, a lot of sidewalk, not all of it, but it includes a good portion of that as well.
Okay, we need a entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we award the 2021 MAPS High School Improvement Projects to Smith Construction.
I'll support.
The motion and support. Any discussion? Hearing none, Linda, we'll have a roll call vote.
James Randall,
Yes.
Dr. Brian Cherry,
Yes.
Kristen Cambenzi,
Yes.
James Hewitt,
Yes.
Glenn Sarka,
Yes.
Jennifer Clip,
yes,
Jennifer Ray.
yes,
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, item number 10. Hi.
Jamie, I do Oh, and I also have one to read, so whatever order we want to take them in.
Well, why don't you go ahead and read that, because I think whoever else is there.
Okay, I have a public comment that we received that with a request to read it by Pearl Larson of Marquette, Michigan. Dear Superintendent William Saunders and members of the MAPS School Board, there has been several requests to address the issue of the Redmond name. I am writing to request that this issue be put on a back burner. Our superintendent, school board, students, teachers, and school staff have been under a great deal of stress for the past year. I applaud you for the work that you have put into solving the problems that this pandemic has placed on our schools. This extra work was above and beyond the normal heavy load that is required to run a school system as large as ours. Thank you. Our students have been under a great deal of stress during this pandemic year. This stress has affected them physically, emotionally, and academically. Please do not add to their stress by addressing the Redmond name at this time. As you know, the Redmond issue divided our
Good evening,
community and
everyone.
school.
I'm sorry, I was
2008,
in the queue a couple of times, but even after a year of being virtual, we're still trying to muddle through in the waiting room. So I am Tammy Nean. I am the Associate Superintendent and Director of Special Education with the Marquette Algerisa. And this year, our administrative team is taking turns attending all of the school board meetings of our varying districts. So this is the meeting I signed up for. Actually, it was last week and Bill said, nope, our meeting is next Monday. So I just wanted to say hello, and this is who I am. If you need any support from our administrative team, of course, we're always here and available. And we also are attending these meetings to make sure we can get a good sense of what is happening, the supports and needs our locals have. So with that, I just wanted to make that general comment that we are here to support your school district and also give a huge shout out to your administrative team, your teachers, everyone who makes all of this work happen, because with the pandemic, as the person that put the public comment in, it has been a really difficult time. And I think all of us trying to rise above every day, we do it for the good of our kids. And a huge shout out of appreciation to all of you.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks, Tammy. Thanks for joining our meeting.
Linda, did you want to finish that letter?
yes, let me go ahead and continue our letter. Let me just start back on the paragraph I was reading. Our students have been under a great deal of stress during this pandemic year. This stress has affected them physically, emotionally, and academically. Please do not add to their stress by addressing the Redmond name at this time. As you know, the Redmond issue divided our community and school in 2018 and 2019. A senior student in January 2019 told his mother that he couldn't wait for the year to end because of the stress of this division. Let's put our own personal agendas aside and concentrate on helping our students come back to a time of normalcy. Our students must always be our first and most important concern. Thank you, Pearl Larson.
Thanks, Linda. Emily, do we have anybody else in the queue? What happened to Wyatt? Well, Wyatt, if you're listening, you can tune in next time. All right. Item number 11, board member comment. Let's start with the list, Glenn Starka.
I have to say, you know, in the last year, The Simpsons has been pointed to as being somewhat prophetic. I would just have to do a shout out to Peanuts, because your voice at the meeting tonight was so much like the teacher in one of the Charlie Brown cartoons from when we were growing up. So I'm going to do that shout out to Peanuts. I want to thank everybody that's made a public comment today. Again, it's hard to stay engaged when we're doing this by Zoom. So those comments and also
We almost lost you there, Glenn. We almost lost you there.
I'm still here.
There you
Take care. No further comment.
go. Okay. Jennifer, yay.
Well, I appreciate the reach out for support, and I think that we kind of are going to accomplish a lot with getting this parking lot moving forward. So I'm glad to see that happening. I'm just getting back from being out of town myself, so I'm getting back in the group, but I look forward to hopefully being in person next time, because it is really difficult to be doing this via Zoom. There's a disconnect in having joined the board as we are in a Zooming world right now. It's hard. I look forward to meeting in person, and I look forward to the public being able to come at some point and be able to give their public comments in person. So looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hewitt.
Just continued thanks and praise to all MAPS employees, and that's all.
Dr. Jerry.
No comment.
Jennifer Clip.
Just to echo what Jen Ray said, I do look forward to seeing you all in flesh and blood and hearing from any public comment in person as well. It was perhaps a easier go for us to start this way as we got our feet wet, but I think at this point we are definitely losing by not being able to see each other close up. And I just I'm hoping that the faculty, staff, and students have a really good spring break. It's been well deserved, in whatever capacity they can celebrate that safely. So just thinking about the school community as they approach spring break and hoping good juju comes their way.
Thank you, Jen. Mrs. Conbenzi.
No further comment.
That's it. I'd like to echo the same comments. Since my voice is shot, I will pass on any additional comments. Item number 13, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll see you again soon. Hopefully face to face.